Have you ever spent months, maybe even years, giving everything you had to your children, only to feel invisible the moment they no longer needed something from you? Maybe you've watched them grow distant, stop calling, stop visiting, or treat your kindness like a given, not a gift. And so finally, after all the sleepless nights and sacrifices, you made a decision to stop reaching out first, to sit back, to wait and see what happens when the silence isn't just on their end. And then, one day, out of the blue, you get a message, a phone call, a knock on the door. They're reaching out. But here's the thing, that moment, when your child suddenly shows up again, it can stir up a storm of emotions. Hope, sadness, anger, relief, confusion. You wonder, should I welcome them back with open arms? Should I ask why they disappeared? Should I pretend like nothing ever happened? That's exactly why this video is so important. Because how you respond in that moment will shape not just your relationship moving forward, but your own peace of mind. And after 60, peace of mind is one of the most valuable things you have. So today, we're going to talk about what to do when your child finally reaches out after you've chosen to step back. We'll walk through 7 powerful shifts in mindset and action that can help you stay grounded, protect your heart, and move forward with strength and grace. Let's start with something that might feel unnatural at first, but is absolutely essential. Don't rush to respond. That's right. When your child calls after weeks, months, or even years of silence, you don't have to answer right away. You're not being rude. You're being thoughtful, giving yourself space to breathe, to feel, to think clearly, because chances are your emotions are high, and that's completely normal. This is your child we're talking about, but urgency is a habit we develop when we've been hurt before. We think, if I don't respond fast, I might lose them again. But responding too quickly can send the wrong message. That you've just been sitting around, waiting for their crumbs of attention. And you deserve better than crumbs. So instead of rushing, give yourself time. Let your heart slow down, maybe finish your coffee, take a walk, talk to a friend you trust. When you're ready, then you can respond. But from a place of calm, not desperation. When you move slowly, you move with power. And when you do respond, here's the second thing to keep in mind. Stay calm. Don't let excitement or resentment take over. It's so easy to swing to either extreme. You might feel thrilled they've finally reached out, or you might feel hurt and angry and want to demand answers. But in both cases, your emotions are taking the lead, and that gives away your control. Let's say your daughter suddenly sends you a message, "Hey mom, just thinking about you." Maybe your first instinct is to reply, "Where have you been all this time?" Or, "I've missed you so much. I've been waiting for this moment." But neither one is helpful. The first is loaded with guilt. The second reveals your vulnerability before you've even tested the waters. Instead, keep your tone even and simple. You could reply, "Hope you're doing okay. I've been keeping busy." That one sentence speaks volumes. It shows that you have your own life, that you're open, but not over-invested, that you're no longer a parent who bends over backwards for one-sided attention. And that brings us to something even deeper, something that shifts the entire power dynamic between you and your adult child. You have to remember, not everyone gets full access to your energy, not even your kids. Now, I know that might sound harsh. As a parent, you've spent decades being available. You picked them up at midnight from a party, drove across town when they were sick, worked overtime to make their birthdays special. But now that you're older, your energy is more precious than ever. You cannot afford to give it away just because someone showed up again. So when your child reaches out, ask yourself, what have they actually done to deserve my full attention? Have they shown real care? Are they checking in because they value me? Or because they're bored, lonely, or feeling guilty? You are not obligated to reopen old wounds just because someone feels like talking again. And you certainly don't have to prove yourself all over again just to keep the relationship going. You've already done your part. Now it's time they do theirs. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. If they truly want to reconnect, they'll show you. Not just with words, but with consistent effort. And if they don't, that's not your failure. That's just information. And here's something that makes all of this easier to manage: keeping your replies short. You don't need to write an emotional essay every time your child texts. In fact, doing that can overwhelm them. Or worse, make them feel like they have power they haven't earned. If they say, "Hey Dad, I've been thinking about calling," you don't need to respond with, "I've been crying myself to sleep for months and wondering why you disappeared." Even if it's true, that's not the moment. That kind of heavy emotional response gives them the upper hand, and it tells them your world still revolves around them. Try this instead. Appreciate the message, "I'm doing well." That's it. You've acknowledged them without chasing. You've opened the door without throwing it wide open. And now the ball is in their court. You're not being distant. You're being dignified. When you respond this way, something powerful happens. Your child starts to see you not just as their parent, but as a person with boundaries, with strength, with a life. And that is often the very thing that earns their respect again. Not tears, not long explanations, not guilt trips, but calm, quiet confidence. This is not about revenge. This is about redefining the relationship on terms that honor your value. Because here's what you might not have heard enough in your life: your presence is not a given. Your love is not endless. Your time is not a bottomless well. Even as a parent, you have a right to receive the same respect you've spent your whole life giving. And when your child reaches out, that moment is your chance, not to go back to the way things were, but to create something healthier, something more mutual, something that leaves you feeling strong, not small. So take a deep breath. Trust yourself. You've lived long enough to know what feels right and what doesn't. You don't owe anyone an instant answer or a flood of emotion or your full availability. You only owe yourself honesty, dignity, and peace. You're not here to fix everything. You're here to protect your heart, your energy, and your joy. And that, my friend, is not selfish. That is wisdom. Now that you've taken that deep breath and remembered that your peace comes first, the next step is to hold steady, to stay centered even when emotions try to pull you in every direction. Because once you've responded calmly and kept your reply short, it might feel like the hardest part is over. But in reality, this is where the true test begins. See, when your child reaches out, they might not even know what they really want. Maybe they feel guilty. Maybe they're hoping you'll just pretend nothing happened. Or maybe they're only reaching out because something went wrong in their life, and now they want the comfort you always gave so easily. That's why this next part is so important. Do not bring up the past. I know. That's tough. You've been holding on to pain. Maybe they said hurtful things. Maybe they ghosted you when you needed them most. Maybe they left you sitting alone in a hospital room or ignored your birthday year after year. And now that they've finally shown their face again, you want answers. You want to ask, why didn't you call? Why did you shut me out? Did I do something wrong? But here's what happens when you open that door. You shift the energy from grounded and calm to heavy and reactive. And the second you do that, you lose the very strength you worked so hard to build. You don't need to revisit every scar just to be heard. You don't need to replay the past to validate your pain. That pain is real. It matters. But dragging it into this new moment doesn't guarantee healing. It only reopens wounds, often at the worst possible time. So instead of digging into what went wrong, stay rooted in who you are now. If they say, "I've been thinking about you," respond with kindness but not desperation. "Hope life's been treating you well." That's enough. You're not pretending everything's fine, but you're also not handing them a map to your most vulnerable places. They'll have to earn that kind of access again. By choosing not to rehash the past, you're not letting them off the hook. You're letting yourself off the emotional roller coaster. That's power. That's healing. That's freedom. And here's something else people don't talk about enough. Especially at our age, you're allowed to set the pace. You don't have to match their energy, answer every message, or jump at every opportunity to reconnect. You get to decide how fast or how slow this rebuilding happens. You get to say, "Let's take our time." A lot of older parents feel pressure to repair things quickly. Maybe it's fear of time running out, or a belief that life is too short to hold grudges. And while there's truth in that, life is also too short to repeat the same painful cycles. So instead of rushing to rebuild something just because it once meant everything, ask yourself, how does this feel right now? Not 5 years ago, not what you hope it will be one day, right now. Does this feel respectful? Does this feel mutual? Does it feel healthy? You can reconnect with your child, but do it on your terms. Let them meet you where you are today, not where you were when you were constantly bending over backwards. You don't have to be cold, you just have to be clear. And clarity protects both of you. That brings us to something that might just be the hardest and most liberating. Lesson of all, stay ready to walk away. Now, I know that sounds extreme. You might be thinking, but that's my child. I could never walk away. And I hear you. But staying ready to walk away doesn't mean slamming the door or shutting down your heart. It means knowing your worth so deeply that you won't stay where you're not respected. It means saying to yourself, I will not beg to be treated with basic human decency, even by my own blood. So many parents give and give, even when it costs them their dignity, their joy, their sense of self. They endure manipulation, guilt, even verbal abuse, just to keep a connection that barely resembles love. But connection without respect is not love. It's dependency. And you don't need that. Not now, not ever. When you stay ready to walk away, you take your power back. You stop needing their validation to feel whole. You start seeing yourself as more than a parent. You are a person who has dreams, purpose, value, and a life beyond the role you once played. Let me tell you something that might feel uncomfortable, but it's the truth. You don't owe unconditional presence to people who offer you conditional love. Family doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. Family means showing up for each other with honesty and care and effort. And if you've been the only one showing up, it's okay to pause. It's okay to stop. If your child is truly ready to rebuild something real, they'll prove it with more than words. They'll show it over time, with consistency, with humility, with action. And if they don't, you keep moving forward. Because your life is not on hold, waiting for their approval. Your happiness does not live in their hands. Your peace does not depend on their presence. You are allowed to love them from a distance. You are allowed to pray for them and still protect yourself. You are allowed to grieve what never was, and still be open to joy. That's what strength looks like after 60. That's what healing looks like when you've lived long enough to know what's truly important. And here's the beautiful part. When you start living with that kind of clarity, your whole energy shifts. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop performing. You simply live. With grace, with dignity, with calm confidence. And whether your child steps up or steps away, you will be okay, because you have you. And that's enough. Let's keep going. Because the way you carry yourself in the next moments can open a new chapter in your life, with or without their full participation. So you're holding steady, You've stopped rushing, stayed calm, avoided the traps of the past, and reminded yourself that you deserve mutual respect. That's already a powerful step forward. But now there's one more piece that ties it all together. One final shift that will determine how this relationship evolves, or if it needs to end altogether. And it starts with remembering who you are. For years, maybe decades, your role as a parent came first. You gave everything to make sure your children had what they needed. You pushed aside your own wants. You tolerated being dismissed. You forgave without apology. You stayed quiet, hoping love would speak louder than pain. And maybe you believed that was your duty. But here's something we don't hear enough as we get older. You are more than someone's parent. You are a whole person. You are wise. You are worthy. And you do not need to be everything to everyone in order to matter. So when your child reaches out, especially after a long silence or distance, don't give away your presence too quickly. Make them earn it. This is not about punishment. This is about balance. Because when you ask yourself, have they done the emotional work to be here with me again? You're not being cruel. You're being clear. You're protecting the peace you've worked hard to find. And more importantly, you're giving them a chance to show up differently. And yes, that might mean they push back. Maybe they call you cold. Maybe they accuse you of being distant or unfair. But remember, people who are used to you being overly available will always be uncomfortable when you start setting boundaries. That's okay. Let them adjust. You're not doing this for revenge. You're doing this for restoration. You are allowed to say, I love you, but I also love myself. You are allowed to say, yes, I'm your parent, but I'm not your emotional doormat. You are allowed to say, if you want to be in my life, I need to see consistency, respect, and honesty. And you don't have to say it with anger. In fact, the most powerful boundary is spoken calmly. If your child reaches out and then disappears again when you don't instantly reward them, that's not your fault. That's information. That's a sign of where they are. And it helps you decide how much of yourself to offer going forward. Now, this next part is delicate but deeply freeing. Let go of the idea that you can fix everything. When your child returns, you may be tempted to put all the broken pieces back together right away. You may want to rush into closeness, to rebuild memories, to make up for lost time. But relationships, especially ones that have been strained, aren't healed by speed. They're healed by steady mutual effort. You're not responsible for their half of the bridge. You only have to tend to your side. So give without losing yourself. Speak without begging. Listen without absorbing blame that doesn't belong to you. That's what it means to lead from strength, not need. And here's something else to keep close to your heart. This moment is not about your past parenting. It's about your present presence. A lot of parents blame themselves. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I was too strict, too soft, too busy, too emotional. But regret is a cruel thief. It steals the power of now. And right now, you have a choice. Not to rewrite the past, but to write the next page. Forgive yourself. You did the best you could with what you had at the time. And if you're still here, still willing to be open, still hoping for connection, that is a beautiful kind of courage. And yes, sometimes your child won't meet you where you are. Sometimes they'll fall short again. And it will hurt. But that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you've grown. Because choosing to love with boundaries, to give without being used, and to hope without being naive, that's not weakness. That's wisdom. If they return with sincerity, openness, and effort, then walk beside them, slowly. Let trust rebuild one step at a time. And if they don't, keep walking anyway. Your life doesn't end at their apology, or lack of one. You've come too far to settle for anything less than mutual love and respect. So as we come to the end of this conversation, let me remind you of something you may have forgotten in all the years you were busy raising others. You are still growing, still worthy, still capable of joy, connection, and peace. You are not stuck in the past. You are not defined by your children's choices. You are not here to chase anyone who doesn't value your presence. You are here to live fully, with boundaries, with love, with self-respect. So if your kids reach out after you've stepped back, remember this: you are the prize. You are the steady ground. You are not chasing. You're choosing. And no matter what they decide to do next, you get to keep moving forward. With grace. With clarity. With power. Now I'd love to hear from you. Has this happened in your life? Did your child reach out after a long time? And if so, how did you handle it? Leave a comment below. You never know how your story might help someone else who's going through the same thing. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and tap the like button. It really helps us reach more people. Don't forget to subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more conversations like this. Because healing doesn't end with age. Sometimes it finally begins. Here's to living your truth, protecting your peace, and standing tall. At any age, you've earned it.